Dr. Alara Vance was a ghost, haunting the fringes of academia. A brilliant xenolinguist, her career had been shattered by theories deemed too radical, too obsessed with the mythical precursors, a civilization that vanished over 100,000 years ago. Now, she was on Xylos, a last-chance contract for a mega-corporation that cared more for mineral rights than ancient history. Her only company was a skeleton crew and the ever-watchful eyes of Commander Eva Rostova, a woman forged in the cold calculus of corporate security. For weeks, their drills had scraped against nothing but bedrock and disappointment. But then, they found it. A vault. Not built, but grown from the moon's core, its surface a seamless expanse of obsidian alloy covered in elegant, flowing glyphs that pulsed with a faint, dormant energy. Inside the cramped, dusty excavation chamber, the air was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the thin atmosphere outside. Alara, her face illuminated by the glow of her analysis tablet, traced a symbol on the vault door with a trembling finger. Commander Rostova stood behind her, arms crossed, her expression a mask of hardened pragmatism. "Anything, Doctor? Or are we just admiring the alien graffiti?" My superiors are getting impatient. Alara didn't look back, her focus absolute. "This isn't graffiti, Commander. This is a dialect of proto-precursor. The syntax. It's not a warning. It's a declaration. A testament to power." Rostova scoffed. "Myths and legends. The precursors are a ghost story used to sell textbooks. The corporation wants to know if there's anything valuable inside that door before we blast it open." A wave of fear and indignation washed over Alara. "Blast it? You can't. This is the find of a millennium. The language itself is the treasure." She pointed to a central cluster of glyphs. "This phrase here, it's a form of authentication. A key. It reads, 'Let the voice of authority be known, and let the sentinel awaken.'" Rostova raised an eyebrow, a spark of dangerous curiosity in her eyes. "A voice of authority? And how do you propose we find one of those?" This was Alara's moment. The vindication she had chased through years of ridicule and dismissal. Her theories weren't just theories. The proof was right in front of her. Driven by a lifetime of academic pride, she made a choice that would echo across the stars. She ignored Rostova's unspoken warning, took a deep breath, and spoke. The words felt alien in her mouth, a series of complex, harmonic tones and guttural stops that no human throat was ever meant to produce. She spoke the phrase she had deciphered, her voice echoing in the silent tomb. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. The silence was absolute. Rostova let out a breath, a hint of "I told you so" in her posture. And then, the universe answered. The glyphs on the vault door erupted in a blaze of silver light. The very stone beneath their feet hummed, vibrating with a power that had slept for 100 millennia. A deep, resonant thrum echoed from within, the sound of a giant heart starting to beat. With a deafening groan of ancient mechanisms, the seamless obsidian door split down the middle, retracting into the walls. Darkness beckoned from within. A cold, ancient darkness, now disturbed. A single, colossal red light ignited in the abyss, fixing on them with unnerving intelligence. What have they done? What ancient power have they unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy? Fear, cold and absolute, gripped the chamber. From the darkness of the vault, a figure emerged. It was a machine, but to call it that was an insult to its artistry. Standing over 50 feet tall, its form was both elegant and terrifying, crafted from the same dark alloy as the vault. This was no simple drone. It was a war relic, a titan of a forgotten age. A sentinel. Its singular red optic swept across the room, bathing the petrified crew in a crimson glow. A voice, ancient and metallic, boomed through their comms, bypassing them entirely to resonate directly in their minds. It was a language of pure, synthesized power. Alara's translator implant scrambled, failing to find a reference. But she didn't need it. She understood the query's intent. It was demanding identification. It was demanding to know who held authority. Rostova's hand went to her sidearm. "Doctor," she hissed, her voice tight with urgency. "What did you do?" "Tell it we're leaving." But Alara was mesmerized. This was it. First contact with a creation of the precursors. Her professional pride warred with her survival instinct. She had to respond. She had to prove she understood. Recalling a phrase from her research, a formal greeting meant to denote a scholar or observer, she gathered her courage. She spoke again, her voice shaking but clear, shaping the alien phonetics as best she could. The sentinel went utterly still. The threatening red glow of its optics softened, shifting to a brilliant electric blue. Every weapon port on its chassis sealed shut. The ambient hum of its active power core dropped to a near-silent thrum. Then, the impossible happened. The colossal war machine straightened its posture. In a movement of shocking, precise grace, its massive metallic arm snapped across its chest in a gesture that was undeniably, universally, a military salute. Its voice echoed in their minds once more, but this time the translation was terrifyingly clear. "Orders received, General." The silence in the chamber was shattered. "General?" Alara stared, her mind refusing to process the word. It was a mistake. A catastrophic, reality-altering mistake. She had used the wrong inflection, the wrong tonal shift. In a language where a single misplaced syllable could change scholar to sovereign, she had just promoted herself. Before anyone could react, alarms blared across the compound. Rostova's face went pale as she looked at her wristcom. "Unidentified ships. Just dropped out of slipspace right on top of us. They're Cathar scavengers." On the main view screen, 3 angular, brutish Cathar vessels hung in the void, their weapon ports glowing. They had been shadowing the expedition, waiting for the prize. The Sentinel's activation had been a dinner bell, and they were here to feast on precursor technology. Plasma bolts rained down on the excavation site. An explosion rocked the chamber, sending Alara and the crew stumbling. Rostova shouted into her comm, "Defensive positions! Return fire!" The Sentinel remained motionless, awaiting orders from its new general. Panic seized Alara. She was a linguist, not a soldier. "Do something!" she screamed at the machine. "Defend us!" The Sentinel's optic flashed. Clarify directive. Defend. Specify engagement parameters. It needed a proper command. Alara's mind raced, scrambling through her linguistic knowledge. She shouted a single ancient word she believed meant neutralize. What happened next was a terrifying display of power. The Sentinel didn't just fire a weapon. A shimmering distortion field erupted from its chest, and one of the Cathar ships simply vanished. Not exploded. Wiped from existence. The other 2 ships, horrified, unleashed their full payload. The chamber's entrance collapsed in a shower of rock and fire, cutting them off. Rostova cried out, clutching a piece of shrapnel in her side. They were trapped, wounded, and a 10-story-tall weapon of mass destruction was awaiting its next command from a terrified academic who had no idea what she was doing. Would her next word save them, or erase them all from history? Trapped. Wounded. The dust and the smell of ozone filled the collapsed chamber. The remaining Cathar ships were preparing for another assault, ready to tear the moon apart to get to the prize. Rostova, grimacing through the pain, leaned against a console. "Vance," she grunted, "it listens to you. You have to get us out of this. Stop thinking like a scholar. Start thinking like a commander." Her words cut through Alara's panic. Rostova was right. This wasn't an academic exercise anymore. She looked at the Sentinel, standing patient and ready. It didn't just understand words. It understood intent, hierarchy, command. Her misspoken title was an accident, but the responsibility was now real. She finally understood. The language wasn't just a collection of sounds. It was a conceptual framework. To command, she had to embody the concept of command. Alara stood tall, pushing aside her fear and channeling every ounce of authority she could muster. She met the Sentinel's gaze, her voice no longer shaking. She spoke, not just reciting words, but issuing a directive with purpose and clarity. A short, sharp phrase from precursor military doctrine. Subjugate. Do not annihilate. Secure this position. The Sentinel's blue optic flared with acknowledgement. It moved with a speed that defied its size, phasing through the collapsed rock as if it were smoke. Outside, the crew's comm chatter turned from panic to stunned awe. The Sentinel didn't erase the second Cathar ship. Instead, precise energy tendrils lashed out, disabling its weapons and engines with surgical precision. It then turned to the third ship, and with a focused gravitational pull, seized it from the sky and gently, deliberately, placed it on the moon's surface, intact, but helpless. It had followed her orders to the letter. Subjugate, not annihilate. It had demonstrated a level of strategic finesse that was more terrifying than its raw power. Silence reigned. The immediate threat was over. As the dust settled, a new reality began to dawn. Alara Vance, the disgraced academic, was now the commander of the most powerful weapon known to exist. The Sentinel, in its act of awakening, had sent out a pulse, a single silent broadcast across the galaxy. An echo of command now answered. In the aftermath, as Rostova was being treated, the Sentinel projected a star chart into the center of the chamber. It showed their location, but it also showed dozens of other points of light, awakening on other dead worlds across the galaxy. Other Sentinels answering the call of a new general. And then, it showed something else. A creeping darkness at the edge of the galaxy. A threat signature so vast and ancient it made the Cathar look like insects. The true enemy the Sentinels were built to fight. They hadn't just been tomb guardians. They were a line of defense. A defense that had failed 100,000 years ago, but was now, impossibly, active once more. Alara stood before the star chart, the weight of ages settling upon her. She was no longer just a doctor. She was a general. Her mistake had not just unearthed a relic, it had inherited a war. Humanity, a species that had just begun to stretch its wings among the stars, was now at the forefront of a conflict that had once brought the mighty precursors to their knees. Her journey was just beginning, and the echoes of her command would now shape the future of all life in the galaxy. The silence that followed the Cathar's defeat was heavier than any battle. On the star chart, the points of light representing the awakened Sentinels burned with silent promise and terrifying potential. Alara Vance had a fleet she never asked for, an enemy she couldn't comprehend, and a title she hadn't earned. The weight of it all threatened to crush her. But she was not alone. Commander Rostova, her side patched with emergency medigel, limped to her side. The hardened cynicism in her eyes had been replaced by something new, a grudging, steely respect. The corporation is screaming bloody murder on every channel, Rostova said, her voice a low growl. They're demanding their asset be returned. The local galactic Concordiat patrol is on its way, probably to arrest us all for unauthorized use of a planet killer. She gestured to the silent Sentinel, which now stood guard at the vault's entrance. They have no idea what they're dealing with. Alara looked from the star chart to the machine. It has a designation, she said softly, having seen it in the machine's initial data burst. Its core programming calls it Warden 1. She turned to Rostova. They can't have it. This is bigger than corporate salvage rights. You saw that map. That darkness. I saw it, Rostova confirmed, her gaze grim. So, what's the plan, General? The title still felt wrong, a borrowed coat that was several sizes too large. But in Rostova's voice, it wasn't mockery. It was a challenge, a question that demanded an answer. Alara's mind, trained to find patterns in dead languages, began to see the patterns of her new reality. First, she declared, her voice finding a new firmness, we need intelligence. She pointed to the subjugated Cathar ship sitting disabled on the moon's surface. Their comm logs, their navigation data. Find out who they were working for. Scavengers like that are rarely masterminds. As Rostova began relaying orders to the surviving crew, Alara faced her colossal guardian. Warden 1, she spoke, the ancient language feeling more natural now. I need to establish a network. I need to speak to the others. The Sentinel's blue optic focused on her. It projected a complex linguistic tree, a web of interconnected symbols. The machine explained, in its direct, synthesized way, that a full command link required more than just a title. It required a linguistic key, a deep conceptual understanding of precursor military doctrine. To truly lead the fleet, she would have to prove she understood not just their language, but their way of thinking. Her academic journey was far from over. It had just become the most important military training in the galaxy. Suddenly, a frantic message came from the crew analyzing the Cathar ship. "Commander, General, you need to see this." On the main screen, a decrypted audio log played. A gruff Cathar voice spoke to a client whose own voice was electronically disguised, cold and imperious. The client spoke of the precursor echo and the awakening of the assets. They were not scavengers. They were a recovery team, hired by a mysterious entity known only as the Collector. The Collector didn't just want the technology. They wanted to control it, to harness the Sentinels for their own empire. Just as the log ended, another alarm sounded. This time from Warden 1 itself. The star chart reappeared, one of the distant points of light flashing an urgent, angry red. "What is that?" Rostova demanded. Alara deciphered the data stream coming from Warden 1. "It's a distress call," she said, a chill running down her spine. "From the Sentinel on Kronos 7. It's under attack." The Collector's forces were already moving, attempting to seize another of the awakening giants. Urgency electrified the air. The incoming Concordiat patrol was minutes away. The Collector was striking across the galaxy. Alara was faced with an impossible choice. Stay, submit to galactic law, and let the other Sentinels be captured or destroyed? Or run, embrace her accidental command, and go to war? She looked at Rostova, who simply nodded, her hand resting on her sidearm. The choice was clear. "Warden 1, Alara commanded, her voice ringing with newfound authority. "Prepare for immediate departure. Set a course for Kronos 7. The Sentinel's optic flared. It turned and, with a grace that defied physics, boarded a colossal hidden transport vessel inside the vault that Alara hadn't even known was there. The ancient ship hummed to life, its systems online for the first time in an eon. "To the crew," Alara broadcast, her voice steady. "This is now a military operation. You can stay and wait for the Concordiat, or you can come with me. I can't guarantee your safety, but I can guarantee you'll be on the right side of history." Not a single soul backed down. They had seen the power of the Sentinel. They had seen the threat on the star chart. They were no longer a corporate survey team. They were the crew of the first ship in humanity's new accidental fleet. As their vessel, the Stargazer, lifted off from the scarred surface of Xylos, leaving the disabled Cathar ship for the bewildered Concordiat to find, Alara watched the dead moon shrink behind them. She had come here a disgraced scholar, seeking the ghosts of the past. Now she was rocketing towards an impossible future. A general leading a ghost army against an unknown foe, with the fate of the galaxy resting on her ability to translate not just a language, but the very soul of a long-dead warrior civilization. The real test had just begun.